Evening, everyone. Welcome to The Next Revolution. I'm Steve Hilton, and this is the home of positive populism. And what a show we've got lined up for you tonight as we're looking ahead to the new Congress and the Donald Trump re-election effort, which is ramping up as we speak. We've got some of your Fox News favorites right here to talk about all of it. Maria Bartiromo will join me in a moment. Plus, I'll be talking with Tucker Carlson, Trish Regan, Stuart Varney, Brian Kilmeade and Greg Gutfeld. They'll all join me with an early look at the field of Democrats looking to take on the president. But first, like it or not, there will be a new Congress in place ready to take on the president or to work with him. So what can we realistically expect to get done in Washington? Maybe more than you think. I just want to say something very directly about all this. I've worked at the heart of government, I've run campaigns, and I've got a very clear point of view. I think this is the time for President Trump to be positive and to be a populist, to remember that he was elected in 2016 to put the interests of working Americans first and to get things done for them. If he does that, that is the best possible start for his re-election effort. Now, to talk about all of that, the host of Sunday Morning Futures here on Fox News and Mornings with Maria on the Fox Business Network, Maria Bartiromo. How exciting to have you here. I mean, I can't tell you how long.
Thank you so much for having me.
How long I've wanted to get you on the show.
And how long I've wanted to come. Congratulations. The show is amazing, and I'm a regular viewer. Thank you so much for including
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Now, look, let's just try and be positive. It's not easy always in this world of politics at the moment. But what do you think we can realistically hope for in the next 2 years with this divided Congress and the president there looking ahead to 2020? What can we hope for?
Well, I think the first point is the reason that the markets rallied the day after the midterm elections, remember that 550-point rally in the Dow, was because corporate America and voters out there thought, okay, well, at least we know negative legislation cannot come and kill the golden goose, the economy that has been growing as fast as
the Republicans keeping the Senate.
That's right, because the Republicans keep the majority in the Senate. So this is really important. So in keeping with that idea of the majority in the Senate, the other positive about that is the president is going to be able to get all his confirmations through.
Right.
He's got the majority in the Senate. He's going to get a new AG. He's going to get new cabinet members, and they will breeze through the Senate, I think, if they have merit, because of the Republican majority there. So that's the good news there. The bad news is that all you're hearing, Steve, on the other side is investigation after investigation after investigation. So we're going to see them want his tax returns. We're going to see them say, oh, there was money funneled to Russia, et cetera, even though we know there's absolutely no Russian collusion. If there were, that would have been leaked about a year and a half ago. So I think the investigations are going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of bluster.
Yeah.
But honestly, Steve, I think the good news is that's all that's going to happen. Infrastructure, big policy mistake could be if the president looks and tries to scramble to find something to agree with the Democrats on, comes up with a $2 trillion infrastructure plan and adds to the debt, because that's only going to come back to haunt them. So I think we do need an infrastructure plan. However, you have to really watch the costs here and taking on too much debt. We're already at $21 trillion, as you know.
That's a great point, because that's when people talk about this new spirit of potential cross-party cooperation and the fact that Donald Trump himself and the president, after his first day after the midterms, in that press conference, he said, look, maybe we can get things done. Might even be easier now because the Democrats can bring us something from the House, and then actually because it's come from the Democrats, we only need a few more votes from them to get over the 60-vote threshold to pass it in the Senate. And when people talk about that, top of their list is infrastructure. Everyone says, oh yeah, we love infrastructure. So you've explained what's the wrong way of doing it, just simply spending taxpayer money on it. What is exactly the right way?
Well, I think the president needs help from the private sector. I mean, he has talked about this being partly federal money, partly the private sector money. I think if he can come up with an idea where the private sector does take on a lot of this cost, that would be a positive, so that it doesn't cost more than $1 trillion adding to the debt. Look, I think the Democrats are going to want to try to get something done with health care. I think the Republicans want to do that as well. Maybe there's some coming to Jesus moment for that, and maybe there is something with infrastructure. But beyond that, Steve, it's going to be a lot of investigations. It's going to be a lot of bluster. They're not going to have merit in the Senate. The Senate is going to stop. And don't forget, the president has that veto pen. And so at the end of the day, nothing is going to stop this president's economic, business-friendly agenda with him in charge.
So that's the top priority. Let's just look at a couple more of the risks. So you mentioned healthcare. What would you be nervous about the president agreeing to on healthcare?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the plan is on the left, so it's hard to know what the options are. But of course, the left is trying very hard to talk about pre-existing conditions. That would be good to protect pre-existing conditions. The Republicans want that as well. What you don't want to get into is a costly plan, again, that is going to add to the debt. Because I've got to tell you, Steve, I'm hearing more and more whispers that this is a big problem. It took us 125 years to get to the first $1 trillion in debt.
Right.
It took us about 10 years to double the debt under President Obama, 10 to 20 trillion. It took us only a year to get to 21 trillion. So this is an issue. At some point, the markets are going to take notice.
Yep.
We're spending $1 billion a day just to pay for the interest on the debt. So this is an issue. I think markets will start looking at it and being worried about it. I think the president has to be careful not to make any policy mistakes in that regard. But I think overall, it was a good result. You know, the Republicans obviously did not hold on to the House, but they made some mistakes in not selling the economic recovery better.
So last point, as you just said, the number one priority, keep the economic recovery going, keep all that good news coming. It sounds like what you're saying is that actually, if they don't do very much, just kind of leave things as they are, that's fine.
That's a positive. That's absolutely a positive. Look, we had 4.2% economic growth in the second quarter. We had 3.5% economic growth in the third quarter. We just have to keep the growth going. People are expecting a slowdown because interest rates are moving up. That's certainly a headwind. But overall, I don't see a major issue with this global recovery continuing. It looks like it's tact. So we'll see about that. But there are a lot of worries, as you've seen the way the markets are trading, that things are going to begin to slow down.
Well, if that's the message to Congress, like, don't do too much, I think that's something they can actually live up to, judging by their past reputation.
You're right.
Maria, thank you so much. So great to see you.
Great to see you, Steve.
All right. So let's hope that Congress can come together either to do nothing damaging or maybe something positive. There's certainly problems of late in all sorts of areas. Earlier, I had the opportunity to talk to Tucker Carlson, one of our favorite hosts right here on Fox News and the author of the new book, Ship of Fools, about all of the post-midterm foolishness we've been seeing. Take a look. Tucker Carlson, I am beyond thrilled to have you join us tonight. So exciting to see you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, so look, we hear all the time about how divided the country is, and most of the time when you see people talking about it, they blame President Trump and the Republicans, and it's the hate-filled, divisive Republicans and Trump in particular. There was a couple of things I saw this week, not necessarily big things, they didn't make big news, but I found them really interesting in relation to this question of, like, who is really dividing America. There's a poll that came out where, if you look at the details of this poll, it basically, they interviewed Republicans and Democrats and independents. It turns out that Democrats, literally, according to the numbers, are twice as bigoted and intolerant of others than Republicans are. For example, they asked the question, how disappointed would you be if a close family member married someone from a political party different than your own? And Democrats were nearly twice as concerned about that. And yet they're the ones accusing everyone else of being intolerant.
Of course. I mean, look at your own life, or anybody watching, consider your own life. Are you more likely to end a friendship over politics than a liberal friend would be likely to end a friendship with you? I mean, of course, they take it more seriously because for the left, politics isn't something you do to make space for the things that matter. It is what matters. It's the goal. Achieving political power and wielding it is the entire point of the exercise. So it's existential for them. They really, really mean it.
And do you think it's got worse? I mean, I don't remember feeling this sense of vitriol from people who I mean, I'm right there in Silicon Valley, as you know. I'm surrounded by it. It's just palpable, this sense of contempt and vitriol. That feels different and new.
Oh, it's much worse. And that's because the left feels threatened, because they've been disempowered, because they can't control Trump. They can't even understand him, but they know that he poses a threat to them, not because of what he's doing. He isn't doing very much, actually. He's having trouble controlling his own executive branch. And of course, the Congress doesn't agree with him in either party. The threat that Trump poses is the likelihood that he will say out loud what they don't want him to say. He will call them on their BS, on their nonsense. He will ask simple questions to which they don't have the answers, like, why shouldn't we have borders? Or, what is the point of NATO? We're not worried the Soviets are going to invade. Right. The Soviets don't exist. Or why shouldn't Russia be an ally? Or why aren't we more worried about China? And by the way, how much money are you getting from China? Questions like this. He's going to catch them exposed in their duplicity. Mm-hmm. He's going to reveal the inside game for what it is, which is basically illegitimate. And that's why they hate him.
And there's another thing I saw, which, I was just really struck by it. It felt... I don't know. I'd love to know what you think is behind this. And, you know, as you often say on your show, you know, let's take it seriously and try and understand it. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal about a tech entrepreneur whose company was acquired by Facebook, and then he was fired by Facebook because he supported President Trump. And there's a reference to an internal meeting in 2016 at Facebook where employees were hearing about this. And there's a quote from a senior manager at Facebook. It says here, just in response to somebody supporting President Trump, multiple women have literally teared up in front of me in the last few days. And I just thought, well, what's behind that? What is it about President Trump that causes people to have this reaction, to me, completely disproportionate reaction to a political disagreement?
Well, it's not, look, this is not the sign of self-confidence. When you know what you're saying is true, when you believe it, when you think it's rooted in reality, you're not insecure when other people disagree with you because you know that in the end you will win because you're right. Mm-hmm. When you're lying, when all that you have is based on duplicity and a system that is basically unfair and rigged, then your nightmare is that other people will start to say something about it. And so you need to squelch all dissent immediately. You need to crush anybody who dares to think for himself. And that's exactly what you're seeing now. What we're actually watching is the end stage of a regime. We're watching the current system die, and the people who are benefiting from it are completely panicked. And that's why they're having to spend so much time firing people over disagreeing with the Halloween costumes or whatever. All this mindless stuff is really a symptom of panic, the panic of people who know they're losing power.
Fantastic, Tucker. I love your analysis, and most importantly, I just think you're seriously brave in the way you constantly call this out night after night. It's really important for the country, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve.
All right, Greg Gutfeld, Trish Regan, and Stuart Varney are all still ahead. But next, we'll talk about whether Washington's new leaders can help President Trump deliver a positive populist message for America. Brian Kilmeade and Lisa Booth join me in a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Abraham Lincoln said it best in the Gettysburg Address when he spoke so eloquently about a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's what positive populism is all about. But does President Trump have enough people around him who understand that populist message and, most importantly, know how to actually implement it? What about the new Senate? What about the new House coming in? What about the White House, the people around the president? Here to break it all down with me are Fox News contributor Lisa Booth and Fox & Friends co-host and author of Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, Brian Kilmeade. Now, by the way, Lisa, just to sort of explain what's going to happen here, Brian needs a moment to make some kind of obligatory joke about my appearance, why I'm not wearing a tie. You know, let's just let him get that out of his system,
fair,
and then we
fair.
can go ahead.
What is fair is fair.
To see you in person is certainly something that's indescribable beyond words. I think you have the most unique look on the channel, and I can't get enough of you. Unlike Lisa, who seems to be a big-time detractor.
Oh, stop. I feel like this was a very beautiful moment, but then you had to go and be me. So, yeah,
exactly.
I'm crying on the inside. So
well, you know, soon I'll be crying on the outside. Anyway, look, let's get
takes more than that.
Well, I think so. So look, one of the things I've just been interested in exploring, and we've talked about this before, is this. What is the difference between populism and the president's message in 2016 that he won on, that appealed to those blue-collar workers, people who hadn't voted Republican in a long time, and, if you like, traditional conservatism, the traditional GOP agenda? There's a lot of overlaps, that's for sure. But one of the things I've worried about is that the president doesn't have enough allies. That was true in the first 2 years. Do you think now, after the midterms, Lisa, there's more allies in Congress?
Potentially. I mean, he definitely went to bat for some of these incoming senators and going to states multiple times, advocating for them, asking for the people to reject people like Claire McCaskill and bring in someone like Josh Hawley. But I find that to be a really interesting question, and my mind automatically goes to that anonymous New York Times op-ed. Remember, that was "I'm part of the resistance." And I remember everyone's reaction was, oh, this person's doing the people's work. But they actually weren't and aren't doing the people's work, because the people elected President Trump to be the president. It is his policies that go and move forward, and he is the one who runs the White House on a day-to-day basis. And so I actually found that op-ed to be deeply offensive, but it does show that there are certainly people surrounding the president, perhaps in some leadership positions, that don't share his same viewpoint.
Yeah, what do you think?
Couple of things. When you try to get yourself elected to the people of Michigan, it's look at me, this is what I offer. But if I have to get Steve Hilton elected in Michigan, you might not agree with me on everything. You are a different candidate. Maybe you're more dynamic, less dynamic. Maybe you're overstated, understated. Maybe you were a Democrat and converted later. Right. So when people say, well, the president lost 5 seats in Texas and he lost it, and the message is not getting through, I go, wait a second. The president went to bat for you, but they're still voting for you, the candidate, the other person. So I don't think it's coming through. The other thing with populism, I think it's more instinct. What does Donald Trump believe? I know people say, well, he was a Democrat, but he's doing on things that he believes, and others are going by doctrine. Conservatives believe this. I'm a conservative, so therefore I believe it. He says, I believe this. Come aboard and follow me. If you can't, let me know. Others say, I'll follow you and I'll do whatever you want me to do. Those are other people say, because I work for you, I'll do what you want me to do. Others sit there and go, wow, I don't get this guy. I'm going to come out, I'm going to play defense. I'm going to just try to keep steady the ship. And that very much reminds me of the first year of the administration. A lot of competent people that didn't quite understand who Donald Trump was. At this point, I think he's closer to finishing off his staff to exactly what he wants. But he can't have sycophants. He's got to have somebody that gets in his face and say, listen, Mr. President, you got to go to that funeral. You got to go to that cemetery.
Totally agree with that.
Right? Yeah, I don't. That is not helping anybody to say, Mr. President, your instincts were always right. You're 100% right here. No, I need you to get up early. I need you to do this. We know we can't get him off Twitter.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. But I think that as well as not having sycophants, you don't want sort of sneery people as well who look down their nose, snooty people who think, oh, he's a bit of a dummy, doesn't know policy. I think there's been too much of that. I just want to ask you, in terms of your book, that echo of the populism of the past, any parallels there? Or?
Totally. I mean, when Andrew Jackson was hated by Washington, he was hated by Boston, hated by Philadelphia, hated by New York. They said he wasn't worthy. He's a vulgarian. Those are my words to describe Trump. And what he did is say, all right, I'm going to take my message to the people. He was the first to campaign, the first to go out into people. And then he had such a groundswell of support, they couldn't stop him. And when he became president, a lot of people ran for the hills, so he hired his family. Does that sound familiar? He hired and everyone's like, you hiring your family? He goes, yeah, I need people we trust. So give Jared a bigger role. Give Ivanka a bigger role. Get somebody in there like a David Bossie and Corey Lewandowski who know how it started. And they know how to finish it, and they know politics. General Kelly's great, but he's not a politician. In the chief of staff, you need a politician. Hey, Lisa, as much as I agree with you, not now. Not in the third year. 4th year we do this. Not now. You got an election to win. Or this is the year we compromise. Next year we can't. General Kelly doesn't have that sensibility because he's a get it done. I don't care about politics. That won't get it done for that spot.
Yeah, I think that's. I really agree with that. Just lastly, just let's look at the Senate for a bit. I mean, the new senators that have come in on the GOP side, they are much more in line with what President Trump's message is than people like the people they replaced. You know, Jeff Flake and so on. So is that something to be optimistic about?
Yeah, I think so. But I also think he's going to have other detractors coming in. Someone like Senator-elect Mitt Romney, who's probably going to join forces with Collins and Murkowski, and then they form this bloc to, try to sway the way things are moving in the Senate. So I think he's always really going to have that no matter what. But I think the best thing President Trump can do, and at least if he's trying to win over some of these detractors, is just continue following through on the promises that he made. Because I remember a lot of conservatives were so skeptical of President Trump, then candidate Trump, of making a lot of these promises, but yet he has consistently followed through on them.
But here's the difference. I want to see compromise. He can't get everything he wants. He's going to have to compromise. And it's going to be the first time the deal comes through, and let's say he does immigration deal, and chain migration and lottery isn't in it, but the wall is, and DACA's got a 10-year path. Are conservatives going to jump ship, or is he going to say, hey, guys, you lost me the House. I have only 52 seats if they get Scott in the Senate. What do you want me to do? Then he goes back and does criminal justice reform. Wow, I think we got something. We might be able to turn down the temperature on the country if he starts getting deals. Instead of, you won, I lost.
Yes.
I lost, you won. Instead of, wow, I got some of what I want. I might go back for more of it.
I love
very
the way you
optimistic
put
view.
that. No, I love the way you put that, and I think it's in line with what the president's first instincts are, and we saw that in that press conference straight after the elections. That was the language he was talking. Anyway, we're out of time there. Nobody cried. That's amazing.
Right, I usually do cry at the end of segments, so this is
Despite Brian's best efforts.
Yeah, I know.
No one cried inside or outside. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
All right, how did the economic message, one that is so overwhelmingly positive, get lost in the march to the midterms? And how can the Republicans avoid the same mistake in 2020? Trish Regan joins me after the break to talk about that and lots more. Stay with us.
Live from America's News Headquarters, I'm Lauren Green. Nearly 2 weeks after the midterm elections, the recount is over, and Florida has a new senator. Incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson conceding to his GOP challenger, Governor Rick Scott, earlier today, just after the noon deadline for a manual vote recount, which showed Scott leading by about 10,000 votes. Nelson's defeat marks the first time in a century that 2 Republican senators will represent Florida in Washington. Another red congressional seat has turned blue. Democrat Gil Cisneros has defeated Republican Young Kim in California's 39th district in Orange County, a former GOP stronghold. Democrats needed 23 seats to take control of the House. They picked up 38. I'm Lauren Green. Now back to the next revolution with Steve Hilton. And for all your headlines, log on to foxnews.com.
You may be wondering how the Democrats were able to win the House despite the Trump administration delivering on an economy that is working for so many Americans. It's one of the questions I had for the host of Trish Regan Primetime on the Fox Business Channel. Trish Regan, take a look. Trish, thank you so much for being here. It's so great to have you on my show. I love joining you on your
I love having you
fantastic new show.
And it's a
Primetime,
pleasure
every
to be
night.
here.
It's wonderful. So let's talk about the economy. There was a lot of criticism of President Trump, particularly during the midterm campaign, about, well, why isn't he talking about the economy and so on? It seems to me with the economy, it's one of those things where it's the experience of it that is really persuasive. If people are actually seeing jobs come back, incomes go up, their city reviving or whatever it may be, that's what really counts. And so the real thing, it seems to me, is to make sure that the progress we've seen under President Trump keeps going. It's not the words, it's the action.
Yeah, the problem with it, Steve, I think, is that it doesn't necessarily spark the same kind of emotion because it's good news, right? The economy's doing well. You feel better about things. Sometimes when you feel better about things, you're less incentivized to go to the polls. And so how do you drive that message home to people that lower taxes, less regulation is the result of a better economy? I think that is a challenging message to drive home. And I think that the administration probably recognized that. So they went with some of the more palatable, more emotional hot
direct
buttons,
things as well.
like immigration.
Yeah. And so just looking ahead now, I'm thinking about, as we inevitably have to do, one election's out the way and then you're on to the next one, 2020, the president's re-election. How do you think they should be thinking about that and keeping the progress on track?
I think that for 2020, it'll be a little bit different. I mean, I think a presidential election is just different, right, than midterms, and more people are motivated to get out and vote in presidential elections. And so for that, Steve, the economy is going to matter. I mean, you've got to, people have to recognize that things are better. And they just are, and wages are going up, and there's a sense of optimism that is quite palatable. I mean, I really felt it during the Obama years covering the economy, all during that. I mean, he was so pessimistic that even when we get a good jobs report, he'd come out and say, yeah, it's okay, but we got a lot of progress to make. This president, on the other hand, I mean, we're talking glass half full all the time.
Yes.
So he'll see a jobs report and he'll praise it. He talks about how we're going in one direction and the only direction is sort of, on the upswing. And I think that that is something that's somewhat contagious for people.
Well, that's right. And also it's interesting because, I mean, it's only people who understand business like you do, and, I hope I do, I've run businesses, is that actually this is all, the crucial thing is business confidence, because it's that confidence that affects your decision making. Will I invest in that extra plant, or taking on new people, or expanding into another market? That's all, it's a human thing. It's all about that confidence. And I think President Trump, of course, because he's a business guy, understands that too.
It's so important. I mean, and this is where President Obama consistently missed it. He just didn't understand. He didn't have a business background. He didn't understand how CEOs think, or even small business owners think. You need that sense of optimism. You need this ability to look forward to something good in the future. You need to know that the government's going to be out of the way and not slapping you with every regulation they can think of. And so I think we have that now. We're on this trajectory. It's very good. I know the market's volatile. I know that there's concerns about the deficit, and those are in debt, and these are very, very real concerns. But nonetheless, the fundamentals are strong.
Yeah.
And that is something to really be excited about right now. I think they didn't perhaps emphasize that enough. As I said, I kind of understand their reasons why in midterms. But as we look forward to 2020, they should be hitting that very, very hard. And we should just keep growing as much as we can between now and then.
Right. And is there anything specific that you'd like to see them do, or in fact not do, to keep that momentum going?
Can we cut taxes again, please? Look, I love that we're now more competitive. We had the highest tax rate all in. When you factor in, local taxes as well for businesses. I'm glad that's gone. Remember all those shotgun marriages that were happening, as they like to call them, inversion deals, right? Where American companies were buying these Irish companies and setting up shop over there. Those aren't happening anymore. You don't hear about those anymore. Why? Because we got a better tax policy. So let's do what we can to make ourselves the most attractive place to be operating a business within reason. And then let's work on the individual side. Let's let people keep more of what they earn. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. You incentivize people to work, and they'll work.
It's a great message. I hope there are people listening so that we can keep this good news going. Great to see you, Trish. Thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you, Steve.
The midterms are over, and the 2020 election is ramping up. So what Democrat could pose a threat to President Trump? Who better to break it down than Greg Gutfeld? He joins me right here next. Don't go away. President Trump is already talking 2020, and so are the Democrats. So who are the frontrunners, the dark horses, and who really stands a chance? Joining us now with an early look at the field is Greg Gutfeld. He is the co-host of The Five and the host of the Greg Gutfeld Show.
Yes.
It's got your name in it, so it must be true.
It is. I'm very excited about 2020.
Are you?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
It's like, I saw a list of 90% of the people I've never heard of, but it's such an exciting time to watch the Democrats implode the way the Republicans did, right?
Because with so many people.
With so many people on one stage, what it does is it creates an opportunity for one person to stand out, which is what happened. It's that contrast theory. The reason why Trump did so well is because 17 people were from the same pond. Right?
Yes, exactly right.
And he was not. And if there were 4 or 5 Trumps, then there would have been a problem. But there's only one Trump. So I came up with a criteria. Would you like to hear it?
I've got one too. I want to hear yours first.
Okay. Number one, you have to have somebody who can deal with Donald Trump.
Yes.
Right. So that's basically, you don't want a Prius. You want a 4x4 with traction control and mud tires. You want a car that can go off-road, so that the candidate needs to be able to go off-road to meet with Trump. This is something that hasn't happened before. Most candidates have to go against candidates that are similar to each other.
Yes.
In this case, that's not going to happen. You also have to have a sense of humor, because you're going up against somebody who's funny. You got to be persuasive, which means that you can't talk in jargon. You got to talk like a 12th grader or an 8th grader. And you got to be surprising. The interesting thing about Trump is that he wasn't a by-the-book conservative by any means. So you can't be a cookie-cutter left-winger or right-winger. You have to surprise people by zigzagging. And you got to let go of the anger and be more about unity and less about divisiveness. I've come up with even a motto for the Democrats, but I'm not going to share it with them.
Because you don't want them to take your ideas.
Exactly. But think about 2020... the perfect vision.
Oh my God!
Yes.
That's some kind of spectacles company.
Yes.
Now, look, the thing that I totally agree with you,
Yeah.
because you didn't mention anything about whether they had to be moderate or progressive or this or that.
Doesn't
I think
matter.
that whole conversation is irrelevant.
Isn't
I
it
totally
scary?
agree.
It's scary because the thing is, I grew up with an ideology that had to be an important thing. Now it's about persuasiveness.
Yes.
And it's like so. You know,
So I tell you what I thought was, like, I was trying to think of, like, what's the real thing if I was trying to pick the right one for them. I think it's more than anything, it's someone who's exciting,
Right.
who's interesting. So my sort of negative version of that was like the snooze index, who's the most boring.
Yes.
You just want to avoid the boring
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
speaking of which, we have some here.
Great.
And I'm going to test them out against your criteria. So who is that to start? Who is this person?
that guy, I think, sold me
This is like my impression of Judge Janine. Do you have
Yes.
street justice going up to
Exactly,
people?
and then she hits you if you're wrong. But he sold me homeowners insurance last year.
Interesting.
Yes, I don't know his name though. Or he's like a character actor in Law and Order. He always plays the architect in Law and Order. He's the one
Can we
that
see
they
this? I
come.
just make sure the audience see this person.
Yeah, he's the one that the cops visit first, and he's like, he knew the victim, but then it turns out at the end in the twist, he's the killer. Does he look? He looks like a Law and Order architect.
So this is John Hickenlooper.
Oh,
who was definitely in the dark horse.
He's a
category.
governor of Colorado.
Colorado, there you are. So a lot of people like
You
him.
know what I like about him? His name, Hickenlooper.
Well, I was going to ask you
You know
about
what
the
it
name.
is? It sounds
Is
like-
it possible to have a President Hickenlooper?
I don't know. It
Is that
sounds
gonna
like a
be okay?
gadget from a science fiction movie. Get the Hickenlooper!
Okay,
Quick
so-
to the Hickenlooper!
What about this person?
Mark Cuban. I'm a fan of the Shark Tank. It's a good show. I like him in Shark Tank because he hates scams. Whenever everybody comes up with a product that like is supposed to cure something, he gets really angry. He's somebody that you're not quite sure what his politics are.
So he sounds like he's pretty good on your checklist. I'm going to give him to you.
I'll give him a 1 to 10. I'm giving him a
You didn't
banana.
want Hickenlooper. What about this?
I think that I saw her on The View the other day. Not that I watched The View, it's just on at the gym.
Who is it? Greg Gutfeld?
Kristen Gillibrand.
Very good, okay.
Not Christine Gillibrand, which is what Jesse Waters would say.
Right, well,
because he
he's
always gets
ignorant.
names wrong.
He's just ignorant.
He is. He is. Finally.
I can say that because I don't have to sit around the table with him later
I
on.
love Jesse, but I think she's she could be very likable, but she's made some enemies. Remember,
Right.
she was the first Democrat, one of the first to say goodbye to Al Franken.
Right.
And she was no friend of the Clintons, was she? I can't remember.
Speaking of
I'm
which,
just talking.
I'm putting her over here.
All
I
right.
don't think she passed
Yeah.
your test. What about, hang on, I've got someone else. Yeah, there we are. Speaking of the Clintons.
Okay, this is a good point. 7 or 8 months ago, I said that she would run again, and everybody
Right.
laughed at me. And I'll tell you why. I call it the obituary theory.
Right.
You don't want the first or second sentence of your obituary to say she lost to Donald Trump, right? Because she was the Secretary of State, she was the First Lady, losing in probably one of the most historic elections of all time. How do you beat the obituary theory? You run again, and the story becomes the rematch.
Wow.
That's how you beat the obituary theory.
And how does she fit on your checklist?
I think that she has a problem with energy and likability. I think her party resents her for what happened to Bernie and how she lost to Donald Trump.
Okay.
But the story
The story
itself
okay,
could be
we'll do it in
bigger.
the middle. Not as bad
Yes.
as okay. All right, well, that's the ads. We're out of time, and it looks
Are we
like it's
really?
President Cuban.
Yes, I think it's President
Can we
Cuban.
have a
No.
Cuban president?
Wait, I have two that you didn't mention. I think Kamala Harris
Oh,
is a
I've got
definite,
her here. Hang on, wait,
and also
there she is.
one that's not
Yes.
in this is Mark Ruffalo, and I'll tell you why.
He
Mark
really
Ruffalo
is.
is
I didn't even have him in my
he's a
big set.
progressive activist actor who's relentlessly positive. So he's, I disagree with him on everything from the pipelines, you name it, climate change. We're not on the same page. But when I watch him, I can tell that he's actually genial, nice, fun, and smart, and he's also the Hulk.
Amazing.
Yes,
that is a good tip. So it's not the dark horse, the green horse.
Yes, he's the green horse. And I think the Democrats need somebody that can unite the party and the country because you have this divisiveness going on. So it's about bringing America together. That should be their motto, bring America together. Bat. Then you can have a little bat. Bring America together. I should be in politics.
You should be running the campaign. All right. I think we're going to keep you here to make sure, because if they go with that, they're definitely going to
I don't know about
a
him.
real challenge. Okay. Next, President Trump ridiculed on the world stage for putting the people of America first. We'll talk about that next with Stuart Varney. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. President Trump's America First policies continue to make waves in the international community, especially in Europe, where the liberal elitists in the EU are shocked by a president actually sticking to his guns and putting the people he represents first. With us now, how exciting. He's from Fox Business. You can see him every morning. Varney and Company host Stuart Varney. So, Stuart, look, we're talking in the week where first you had the president attacked for his belief in nationalism by the president of France. And then you had the new information on the Brexit deal. Brexit itself, of course, was a representation of people's desire to put their country first.
Yeah.
Why can't people understand that there's nothing wrong with this?
Well, precisely. And I think people are beginning to understand this. Look, nationalism, President Trump is a nationalist, self-proclaimed, America first. It is not nationalism which tears up Europe. It's the failure of globalism, the failure of open borders. It is the failure of countries to be allowed to make rules for themselves. That's what's breaking up Europe. Macron is totally wrong on this. It's the exact opposite of what's really going on. And this idea of a European army for the Europeans is almost a joke, isn't it? Can you really see a pacifist continent getting together to create a warlike army that's really going to defend them? Nonsense. They cannot work without America's military, period.
That's exactly right. And in fact, that's what started this whole spat, really, when President Macron started saying we need a European army to protect us from America. I thought that's one of the most insulting things I've ever heard.
Absolutely insulting. What is the man thinking of? I mean...
Well, he's basically just pandering to his people in France. He's having a very tough time politically, and he just wants to deflect by attacking President Trump.
I think President Trump had a hard time restraining himself from going after Macron, who's got an approval rating of, 26%, and he's criticising the President of the United States.
Totally agree. And by the way, it was a double insult, because first Macron insults America by saying we need an army to protect ourselves from America. Then he insults President Trump personally by going on about nationalism. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is this notion that we've seen from the elitists ever since this argument flared up, that nationalism is somehow to be equated with... I mean, I've heard literally people saying, well, that's what the Nazis were. National Socialists is all about authoritarianism and so on. My background is Hungarian. If you talk to people in Eastern Europe who were under the yoke of the Soviet Empire, they see nationalism as freedom, as liberty.
Yes. I think the left is going after the president who says he is a nationalist because they want to draw racial comparisons or warlike comparisons from the last century, when nationalism was alive and well in Europe and created a couple of world wars. They want to slime the president by abusing the word nationalist. I think nationalism is respecting your own country and defending your own country's interests. It's very much aligned with patriotism, which is the love of your country.
Exactly right.
They're not contradictory, they're complementary.
Exactly right. Very well put. Now, we'll talk about your own country. Here we are, you and I, two Brits here in America.
Yeah, amazing.
How that happened, I don't know. But I'd love to just hear you talk a little bit, and I've heard you do it before, just right now when we're here with focusing on this topic, about your love for this country.
Oh, there's all kinds of things which I truly love about America, and loved right from the get-go 40 years ago. Number one, upward mobility.
Yes.
I've never, ever felt that I was restrained by my class background or my religious background or anything else.
Yeah.
It's upward mobility. How far can you go with your drive, talent, brains, and ability? Number two, this is a vast country. Very varied. Surely there's somewhere here that really appeals to you. And lastly, I really like Americans. I mean, where else in the world, Steve, tell me, where else in the world can a guy go with an obvious, very foreign accent, get on national television and tell you, the locals, what's going on in your society?
Yeah, you better be careful with that, Stuart. After this segment, maybe that won't go so well, but I totally appreciate the point. Two Brits together attacking the American, but I do appreciate what you said, and I completely agree with all the points you made, and one thing I'd add to it, actually, is the thrill of really understanding, for me, even someone who learnt about America academically back in Oxford University, just being here and understanding the genius of the founding idea of America, what the founders did with the Constitution and the way that that is applied every single day and frames our political debates. That is incredible.
You went to Oxford?
Yeah, I don't know how I got in there either. First there and here. I mean, you know, it's incredible.
My good,
luck,
you're doing
really.
well, lad, let me tell you. Well,
Exactly.
But I do take your point. When you arrive here and you see the reality of America, well, to put it in a nutshell, I got a sense of liberation. And I still have that feeling today, 42 years later. And I chose to become an American citizen.
Yes.
It was my choice. And I've got a pet peeve, if I may. Can't stand hearing immigrants criticize the country that they've moved to.
Right.
Quit whining, for heaven's sake. You are blessed by being in America. Enjoy it.
I couldn't agree more. Stuart Varney, thank you so much. Great to see you. Really
Good round,
appreciate
you know.
it. Exactly.
Thank you,
There
Steve.
you go. That was great. All right, back with more in a moment. Don't go away.